Hello. My name is Saras Windecker. I'm an ecologist at University of Melbourne, and I'm excited about open science, mostly because irreproducibility of results affects the credibility of our research and the decisions that they inform. The research cycle is large, and we have begun to create tools to make more and more of it reproducible. However, there are still gaps. I think many of us are familiar with the concept that researchers, and many of us, go from data to published results with a bit of magic. Believe me. This is pretty common. It's becoming less common as we develop open source tools to produce our analyses and to encourage best practices, things like code organization, automation, dissemination, and documentation. I'm a little ahead. And these best practices are beginning to be very effective to encourage that cloud of mystery between our data and our published paper to begin to disappear. However, I'd argue that this cloud of mystery also lands on our data preparation step. This is quite common in a lot of disciplines. We're not handed readily prepared data. We've begun to address this, for example, in open source software that cleans satellite imagery. However, there's still a lot of work to be done. In my thesis, I looked at the carbon composition in a series of plants as they related to decomposition. I didn't have enough money to do the traditional chemical analysis, so I decided to look for an alternative. And one method that people use is thermogravimetric analysis. You burn the plant species, and the result is a multi-peaked curve of mass loss. In order to use this in your analysis, you need to use a peak-fitting software. All the papers that I read said something like, "We conducted peak fitting in X." That's it. No explanation, no starting values. Mixture models are notoriously hard to fit. And again, I didn't have the money or the inclination to use these black box softwares. So what's the problem here? Even though I had prepared myself well to have an open data analysis, I diligently simulated my data and prepared my scripts in advance, I was left with the possibility of having a black box approach to create the data that would be needed for this analysis. So what's missing? What's missing is to illuminate this, I almost made it, over here, open data. I don't think that's the right term because that sounds like sharing your data. Let me know if you have ideas. But this idea that the data preparation steps in our workflows also need to be given some attention. So this is exactly what I did. I created code to do the mixture modeling for my peak fitting myself. And then I dutifully wrapped it into a package that I called mixture, like a mixture, get it? And also a hexagon is the shape of a carbon, just saying. And I was very excited, and I doubt that anybody in this room is going to use this because probably none of you are measuring the carbon composition in plant material. However, it leads me to a bigger point about the utility of developing software for these different phases in our cycle. Open software, I probably should illuminate here inference as well, because packages such as our Markdown have begun to allow us to have open science practices there as well. But illuminating these additional data preparation steps of our workflow, oh no, it's done. Well, please let me know if you have any thoughts about this and how we can disseminate greater programming among domain experts to improve this in our work. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So if you read the abstract for this talk has nothing to do with it because the abstract, like most abstracts, was written before the talk was. So don't expect any correlation there. I think there are like 3 points in the talk. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about an experiment we did this year at the Center for Spatial Data Science at the University of Chicago. This is a sort of experiment in teaching and sort of me learning a lot about how to teach. the Center for Spatial Data Science does open source software and methods. Mostly in spatial. So the role that I play at the Center for Spatial Data Science is that of our spatial advocate. Take out the spatial, and this is actually something that you all are probably familiar with. You may play the role of the R advocate at your company or center. And so sort of what I was supposed to do was teach researchers, how to do things. If you are the only R person in your community, no one's done your job before. And for me, this was sort of the case. No one had ever, tried to teach econometrics researchers in my center how to use R. Most of them were Stata and Excel people. And so what I was doing was sort of introducing them both to spatial and to R at the same time. The way I did this was through education, and so I put together our spatial workshop, essentially weekly workshops to teach basic concepts of spatial data. I started with visualization because that often motivates people, and I found that this platform was just a really good way to just introduce people slowly. I used Bookdown, which I found was a good lightweight way to set up an online infrastructure for my researchers. So I didn't have to know too much about websites or HTML, CSS to put that together. I just, wrote some R Markdown, put it in a structure, and then I had a Bookdown with, maps and various challenges in it that people could reference. In our pilot workshops, this is sort of what they looked like. I would stand at the beginning of the room, at the front of the room at the beginning, explain something like, here's how to make this rate map of Chicago, community areas. And the researchers was like, okay, let's try that out. And then after that, we would work on the challenges together. If you've taught in any context, this is often what happens. You teach and you're like, it's going to work. And then everyone's like, no, it does not work. It does not work for me. And so this is me sort of troubleshooting with our researchers. Why is this not installing? You will notice that everyone's in pairs. And so what would happen is people would pair up. Experienced people would sort of help lesser experienced people. This actually led to really useful insights for me because it's troubleshooting spatial workflows in practice. Spatial data is very hard for someone who's never even looked at spatial data in an analytical context before. And so in the notes, you'll find all these little warnings that sort of are recaps of things that I learned during the workshop. The order in which you give arguments to this function matters. I have to look it up every time. A spatial join is not the same as an attribute join. Researchers don't even know what an attribute join is. So then you're like, okay, a spatial join, and they're like, oh, no. And then you're talking about projections, and everyone's like, what is that? This eventually led to contributions back. So in the process of talking to researchers, I found that certain functions in the software were a little bit confusing. What's the difference between ST intersection and ST intersects? And I was able to submit issues to the software based on that feedback from researchers in my workshop. I was also able to add a package documentation website using PackageDown to the SPDEP package, which is a spatial econometrics package. It's for spatial regression and things. So that helped our researchers sort of come back and use the software better. So it's sort of like teaching-driven documentation. Finally, if you've ever done any type of education, in the end, after all the pain and installation, it's worth it. So this is one of my researchers, Farhat, showing a map he made with TMAP. This is, I think, some of the districts of Turkey and some economic explanation of some variable. But this is our workshop. And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't thank the open source maintainers, people who've written books that have thanklessly and thankfully, hopefully now, worked to make this better and make it possible. So Edzer, Roger, the geocomputation folks, big shout out to all of them for doing work that is good for all of us. So finally, if you're interested in looking at the resources, you can go to this website. Disclaimer, it's still under construction. As Mina said in her talk yesterday, when you're in education, you're always sort of you're never done. You keep improving things. So if you want to check out some tutorials, I would recommend going to the tutorials link. I think the notes are still in development. I have to add a lot more learnings from this year into them. But you can learn spatial data science, analysis, and visualization and things like that on here. So I would highly recommend. Let me know if you have any feedback. I think it has a GitHub repo at the bottom. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Will, and what I'm going to be talking about today is creative coding in R. So I got really into creative coding about a year ago when I started following some people on Twitter that were generative artists. And my initial thought was, I want to be a part of this. How can I make this stuff? And so I just decided to jump right in, and I started a project called 12 Months of Art, where I each month do a new series of artwork entirely made in R. And recently I'm reaching the halfway point, and I realized that I've learned a lot about R so far through this project, and I want to share some of that experience with you and talk about why I think creative coding is a great way to learn R. So first, a little bit about myself. I am bad at math. So when I first started this project, I was fairly intimidated because I don't have a degree in math or engineering or computer science. I've never even taken a computer science course. But all through university, I would take these math courses because I thought, well, this seems useful. But I was never really engaged with the material, so I would do pretty poorly in these classes. And so I was clearly intimidated when I started this project, but I decided to just face my fears and dive right in. And what happened was that it really actually taught me to love the subject. So almost overnight, I started doing things like staying up late to read papers about algorithms and buying books about trigonometry. And I think the reason is that I was just so much more engaged with the material because I had a goal. I was making something visual that was fun. And this gets at something like Angela mentioned, that for teaching how to code, a lot of times people recommend starting with data visualization. And one of the reasons is that everyone loves visuals. So the RStudio team has lots of great education resources where they talk about why you might want to start with data viz. And it basically boils down to just being more engaging and more fun than something like data wrangling. And I think data viz is wonderful. It's what I do for a living. But it's a rather specialized skill. So you're not going to learn general purpose programming from just doing data visualization. And that's where I think making artwork and making generative art and creative coding has an edge, because there's really no limit to the types of programming skills you can learn by making generative art. So that kind of brings me back to my original point, which is that art can be a great way to teach coding. So just over the last 6 months that I've been doing this project, I've learned so many new skills or improved upon my skills. I've worked on writing better functions, conditionals, loops, learned a lot of trigonometry, learned a few new algorithms. I've written R packages. I learned how to write add-ins, do Shiny apps. And these are just a few of the things, and I could keep going, but we have about 2 minutes left. So I want to talk a little bit about why I use R, because traditionally generative art is done with JavaScript or Java. The answer is because I knew R and I did not know Java or JavaScript. But on a more serious note, I think R is actually a great way, a great environment for doing creative coding. And part of the reason is because it actually doesn't have as many of these pre-baked libraries that a lot of other resources do. So the reason I think that's a good thing is because it forces you to sometimes implement these solutions on your own or really dig down and understand the solutions at a deeper level, which is a great way to learn. And the second reason is the exact opposite, which is that it does actually have a lot of resources that you might not realize are even useful for creative coding. But I could not do any of the things that I do without these amazing packages. And actually in June, just last month, I published a blog post that's a whole roundup of all of my favorite blogs and tutorials and packages for creative coding. So you can check that out. And if it still seems hard, I recommend that you steal like an artist. So feel free to go to my GitHub. You can take any of my code, you can modify it, tweak it, do whatever you need to do, and I guarantee you will learn something in the process. So I hope that this has inspired you to go ahead and try your hand at making something creative with R. You can follow along on my Twitter, where I post the most frequent updates, and you can check out my blog and my GitHub, which has all the write-ups and all the tutorials and all the code for these projects. So I want to leave you with one final piece of advice, which is if you decide to try creative coding, you have to just let go of whatever fear you have. So, when I started this project, I had a lot of fear about the programming side. Maybe you have fear about the creative side. But I recommend that you just go for it and try doing something in R that's just for fun. So.
Hello, everyone. My name is Beatriz. And I'm here to talk about the evolution and importance of the R-Lady São Paulo chapter, which is in Brazil, in Latin America. And the slides are available in this link because there's some links in there if you want to see something. And so I'm an R-Lady co-organizer in São Paulo. And I started learning R when the the chapter was created, so it's less than a year ago, and being part of the Our Ladies was something really important for my path learning R. And this is Bruna. She also helped writing the abstract, but she couldn't attend the event. And she was one of the persons who helped creating the chapter in Brazil, in São Paulo. And she also helped creating in Curitiba. And she also participates in the Our Ladies in Dublin because she's doing a PhD there. And I think you all heard about Our Ladies in this event. But if someone doesn't know, Our Ladies is an organization that aims to promote gender diversity in the art community. And we do meetups and mentorships and in a safe environment. So, 35% of the Our Ladies chapters in Latin America are in Brazil. And we have 12 chapters in Brazil. And São Paulo is the biggest city in this country. We have like 12 million people there, and Our Ladies is the only one meetup about art in São Paulo, the big city. So we started doing meetups in August 2018, last year, and we already have like more than 400 members in the meetup site. Every event is booked really fast, and we already held 10 events, more than 10 events actually. So we had meetups, workshops, datathons, and we plan every month a meeting. And but what do we do in these meetings? Some of the events are focused on teaching how to use a package. We already did contents about dplyr, ggplot2, R Markdown, stringr, Sharingan. That's what me. I'm a huge fan. Perm. And some of the other events are more like study cases. We get a data set and try to work on that, like explore open data, public data. And one that I thought really interesting was the one that we did with electoral data from Brazil, because there were a lot of journalists. They were really interested in how to use R. So we also participate in other chapters. We've been to Niterói, in Rio de Janeiro, and in this picture we have 4 Our Ladies from 4 different chapters in Brazil. And we also collaborate with other projects through lectures and workshops. We are always open with the community. Sometimes they send us email, oh, you give a lecture, and we do it. And we would like to acknowledge as well the companies and organizations that provide us like spaces and food and sponsorships. And Our Ladies have a conduct in a lot of languages, so we use that. And we let all the content available on GitHub for free in this link. And the activities are all free to attend. So Our Ladies is really important in Brazil to promote R in our community and promote gender diversity as well. And I hope this small talk could motivate some of you to look up the Our Ladies chapter in your country. And if you don't find it, you can look it up in the website as well, how to create Our Ladies chapter where you live. And this is a shiny app that shows all the Our Ladies chapters around the world. And I would like to thank the organization for this event, for the diversity scholarship. Otherwise I couldn't be here. I would like to thank the Our Ladies Global, and I would like to thank the other São Paulo co-organizers as well, including Bruna. And I made this presentation with Sharingan and Kunoichi, which is a theme made by an Our Lady to do presentations. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Binod Bogati. I'm from Nepal. Currently, I'm computer science. I have computer science background. I'm from Nepal, I already told, and today I'm talking about building active community. It's about my experience, personal experience I want to share about my community. It's a data-focused community. We work on data. It's like Beatriz said. We have we have less than a year of experience. We started from bottom. We didn't have any chapters of R. What we do is workshops, meetups, hackathon. We already did around 12 workshops, 3 meetups, and 2 hackathons at our place. And there are the few pictures of them. During we organized different events, we had lots of challenges. I listed down here. It's from leadership to event resources. We'd have lots of challenges. So for these challenges, we worked on different kind of aspect that we are going to share. I'm going to share about it. How did we really keep running event? It's all about teamwork. We have currently we have 4 organizers. So the problem for was that we have we study at the same place, and we have similar. We are on same education level. So we had a problem that we can't time management. Yeah. And for that, we did a pre-planning when we can get a bit free from the exams or kind of thing. And we did the free venues because for that we can't afford most of the time we can't afford the venues. And the event we took was on weekend. And for that, the first time we had less participants, so we had to promote our event. Okay, for the building community, we have to do lots of things like we need to focus on the contents of the participants. Next is to get the support from the vendors or stakeholders, like the community, like the R consortium and the R studio really helps the community. And main part of the participation is kind of motivation. What you get, it's either intrinsic or extrinsic. It means what you get. If you have the students on the community, they really comes to learn the things. Example, to get support from the community if they are stuck in some kind of code or related thing. And the main thing people participate will be if you can make the environment friendly. If you are interacting, then the more arrival of the people happens in the community. And the problem we faced on our community was diversity. While we organizers were all male, so that time what we faced, the problem was there was few ladies coming to our events. So for that, what we thought about is we saw our ladies on Twitter, yeah, and there was a global R user group. We sent our female to get leadership on the R ladies. And okay, I got missed. Okay, my discoveries is about we need to really focus on the audience, what they want. The content we provide should be similar to what they want. And the next thing is diversity and teamwork. Yeah, I already said it needs to be collaborated within a team. And frequent communication really helps you to get engaged within. We use Slack to communicate between the things when we are offline or online. And last one is you learn more when you do it. Yeah, it needs lots of things to do beforehand and lots of collaboration needed. Thank you. You can follow me on Twitter. This talk supposed to be a lot of things to speak about. I have written a blog. I'll share it after some time. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eyitayo from Nigeria. I'm a software developer. I'm a graduate of computer engineering. Yeah, so this talk came about a research I did recently about the sustainability of communities, especially our communities in Africa and in Nigeria. So I found out that 7 people have previously started to try to start an R community in Nigeria. So I interviewed them and asked them, what exactly is the problem? What happens? At what point aren't you able to further go on and all of that? So I was able to gather from what they told me. I came up with 2 models that has worked for me. I've actually been building communities for like between 5 to 7 years now. So I've worked with these communities, and what I've been using in the past, I decided to bring it together and see how it could help them. So I discovered that a lot of people are missing engagement and retention, which are they look similar, but they're actually very different. You know why? Because when you do a meetup and you're like, okay, let's build a shiny app to look at all the hospitals in the community, everybody's like, oh yeah, excitement. But after the first meetup, what happens? When they get home, what happens? Let's say the first meetup, you have about 20 attendees. What would happen in the next meetup? Would you have 20 or 30 or 20 or still 10 or 5 or nobody even shows up? So like engagement is what happened at the first time. It was this is our conference, let's go, But after the conference, when we go back to our countries, what happened? Do we start using other frameworks? Everybody will be like, oh, I love our ladies. Will I be able to go back to my country to start one or to support an existing one? Yeah, so I mean, those things have to go hand in hand. As long as you're like, okay, fine, this is my first meetup, I want people to be excited, you still have to follow them up. So like, this is like a couple research I made, and I noticed that it is just one R community that is recognized on the website. I found out that there are 6 other ones in Nigeria, which probably the consortium is not even aware of. So I'm just gonna be saying how to combine the 2 models. Yeah, from welcoming. When somebody joins a meetup, you see, oh, welcome to Our Ladies Nigeria community from the meetup team. So what happens after that? Your name is Tayo, you started an R community. Are you a meetup team? No. After the first generalized email from the meetup, why can't you craft a personalized email? Probably to make the person, okay, fine, let me look for the next meetup. When is it coming? I'll be so interested in going for the next meetup. But when you send me it is not even you sending me, that's meetup sending me a welcome email. I'm like, oh, okay. Even if I go, it doesn't make anything to me, so I'll just forget about it. Then the second one is content creation. As a community manager, you have to have a hub for your content. And sometimes some people have brain blocks and all of that. You may not have ability of creating content every time. So also call in for a blog post, tweet and tweet chats within the community just to make everything go. Like it's not just you doing it. A lot of people in the community are engaging. It keeps, retention comes to then gamification. It shouldn't be all about coding and in the community. There should be games. Like I saw something with Open Analytics yesterday, and I super loved it. I was already thinking of how I could, go on GitHub and get the source code and modify it to suit my needs. So after the game, let there be rewards. Let me say, some people are very, very active in the community. What do you give to them? It doesn't have to be money, but it could be some special badges and all of that. So apart from physical events, how do you, follow up on social media? Could be through Slack, could be tweets groups, could be tweet chats. Just to ensure that there are follow-ups, office hours. Yeah. So after using all this model, I've used for over 5 years. I noticed that when I was just doing engagement, I had 16.7% increase. And when I was just using retention, I had 3.3 increase. But when I combined the 2, I have super over 50%. So just tweet at me your question and I'll get them answered. Thank you.